Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point. And today I am finally going to do this long awaited, well, I don't know if it's long awaited, but the video that I've been promising you guys for the past probably 3 weeks now. So hey guys, if you're watching this video, please like the video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and please comment on the content. I put it out there to get a discussion started about these blogging and vlogging streets out here and how people are just putting out fake information. I wanted to share this information and this book from a course that I took in college at the University of South Florida. Go Bulls! And so anyway, like I say, like the video if you are watching. And then don't be afraid to comment. I do read the comments. I mean, I'm a small enough channel that I can read the comments and engage with people. And I hope to never be so big that I can't do that for the people that take time out of their day to watch my videos. Okay, and also he doesn't talk about it that much in this book, but trolls, and those are people, believe it or not, who are paid to actually go on content, whether it's a YouTube channel, YouTube video, whether it's a Periscope video, whether it's a post on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whether it is an actual online news article from reputable sources or non-reputable sources. There are people that actually get paid to like that content. They're paid to post comments in that content to kind of drive the narrative, especially if it's an article where the person who's writing the article wants the readers to feel a certain way about that article. They will pay people who go on and under multiple usernames, and they plug in comments, and sometimes these are prefabricated comments. Sometimes they're just told, hey, this is what I want you to write about. And so this is why you'll see on a lot of comments the same thing being repeated over and over and over and over. It's because they're trying to drive that narrative. And so like with the R. Kelly situation, you'll hear people calling him a pedophile. You'll hear people, saying he sexually molested these people. He's holding these people hostages. He has a sex cult going on, and and those are like keywords, and they're commonly used in all those comments. And sometimes you'll be reading comments and be like, dang, like, why is everybody saying the same thing? Does nobody have an independent thought on anything? And it's because those people are being paid to plug that content in to get actual readers who come to the page. And because ask yourself, how many times have you pulled up an article and before you actually read the article, you skim down to see how many comments, and if there's no comments, you might be thinking, okay, well, this article ain't about nothing. But then if there's 1,000 comments, you're like, oh my God, they must really be talking about something, so let me go read this article. And then if they have a plug-in like Facebook or Twitter, where you don't even have to create a login, you can just use your Facebook login, you're more inclined to comment, and chances are your comment is going to be in line with what everybody else is saying, because not too many people want to go against the grain and make an independent thought that's contrary to what the majority of the people are saying. And so for those of you who are wondering how much trolls make, it's not a lot of money. Like, they may get, it's sort of like advertising on YouTube. Like, depending on the size of the channel, it depends on how much people make on their YouTube channels. So what I may earn for a 30-second view of an ad is different from someone who has like 500,000 subscribers would get paid for views on their ads. So like, I actually have ads that have earned 1 cent. so, or videos that have earned 1 cent in revenue. So it's like, what is that all about? And that, not necessarily over time, but like if I narrowed it down and one person watched that video today, it might say 1 cent. So ad revenue does vary, depending on the audience that you have secured in terms of people that subscribe to your channel. And then also keep in mind that the people that subscribe to your channel are not always the people who watch your content. A lot of times people watch content because they're doing a search because they want to hear about a certain topic. And so in this case, we're talking about R. Kelly. So people will put R. Kelly in the search engine and then they'll just watch videos with that content. And they may or may not be subscribers of your channel. And so if you guys recall, when I first started doing the R. Kelly series, as I call it, I talked about when I was in college. So I earned my bachelor's degree in English literature and world cultures, but I also earned a minor in mass communication. And so one of the courses that I took in my mass comm program was about blogging and how to successfully blog. And so one of the books for that course was this book right here. It's called Trust Me, I'm Lying: Confessions of a Media Manipulator, and it's written by a guy named Ryan Holiday. And so he basically talks about how media has changed. And it used to be a time when we looked to CNN and Fox News if you were conservative, CNN if you're liberal. And we would look to those stations, and even our local news stations, we would look to them for our news coverage, and they were trusted sources. But as technology has changed and you bring in the internet, you bring in social media, our local newspapers are shutting down, or they're going to digital, where you have to pay a subscription online. Then you get bombarded with all of these ads. News stations, I know here in St. Pete, our local news stations, like they have incorporated so much of social media. They have their own little TMZ-like programming going on where they cover, stuff that's happening on Facebook and Twitter and what's trending in the news. And so we've really gotten away from, the ethics of media. And of course, your CBSs and ABCs, they still try to conform to those ethics. But we saw, just a week ago with the Gayle King and R. Kelly interview, like her, I said when I talked about that video that I just really questioned her journalistic integrity in how she covered that that interview, and how basically that interview reminded me, it was like Gayle was Nina Parker doing a Love and Hip Hop reunion, the way she was like all up in R. Kelly's face. And she wasn't trying to get answers out of him as much as she was trying to push a narrative. She was basically saying, but these girls are saying, and so she was just like trying to force this narrative on him, like she was trying to get him to say, okay, I did it, I admit everything that you're saying is true. And in the past, you would not have seen that type of interview taking place on a network like CBS or ABC or NBC. And so one of the things that I keep meaning to bring up and keep forgetting, so I made a note not to forget to talk about it today, and that is, if you guys notice that, so R. Kelly is facing these 10 counts, 4 victims, but none of those victims are Azriel Clary or Jocelyn Savage or Dominique Gardner. But these are the 3 people that are like flooding the blogs, flooding the headlines right now. And we have all this focus on them being held hostage. Why won't R. Kelly let them go? Why isn't a meeting being set up? And then we have to keep in mind, all 3 of these women are adults. And they are free to come and go as they choose. But the media and all the headlines are just harping on their stories. And we aren't hearing anything about the trial or about the actual cases against him, the women that are involved. Why isn't Geronda Pace like all over the news? Why isn't she being interviewed? Why isn't she being questioned about being on the Bill Cunningham show where her sister was accusing her of being a prostitute? Why aren't we talking about the fact that she was on MySpace and she was the one that actually introduced Dominique Gardner to R. Kelly allegedly? And why aren't we talking about these photos that have, that are surfacing showing what's supposed to be her mother and the sister who was actually brought her on the Bill Cunningham show actually being at the trial, and how she said that she was skipping school, catching the bus like so many miles and minutes away from where she lived every day to attend this trial. But nobody is talking to her. Nobody's, getting her story. We haven't seen her on the news or anywhere, as much as we saw her in the Surviving R. Kelly series. And so that's a question that we need to ask. The Heather Williams lady, who they're saying is HW in the indictment, she tried to sue R. Kelly, I think for like $50,000. And R. Kelly was like, no, I'm not giving you any money. Nobody's covering that really. And then the RL, which, some people are saying that RL case is the Rashana Landfair. But the story that I connected to that RL person, I think was actually it was her birthday party. I would have to go back and read my notes, but I think that was the one I connected, was at the birthday party, and they supposedly gave the phone number, and the mother took the phone number but kept the phone number, and the girl got the number out of her purse. However, that situation went. So we don't know who this RL is. And then in the news on yesterday, the judge ruled that they will televise all of the hearings, the actual trial, and that unless one of the accusers are saying that they don't want to be photographed, they don't want to be videotaped, and the media won't be allowed to do that. And so far, the HW person has says that she, doesn't want to be made a spectacle of. But I'm like, okay, but you are the one that is coming forward with this story saying that this happened to you. So she says she doesn't want to be identified, and that, this isn't what she signed up for. And then they say that RL doesn't want to be identified. So is RL Rashana Landfair, or is she somebody else with similar initials? So let's go ahead and get into what this book is all about. So what we have now is this media circus surrounding R. Kelly and this case. People are, and I do it too, and especially on YouTube, because many of us, like 99% of us, don't have access to these people. And then some of us just don't want, to get that deep into it. I know for me, this is just something I do. This isn't paying my bills. I mean, I might be able to go to a nice dinner, out with the money that I get each month from YouTube. But I'm not on here, trying to make a name for myself. I'm not on here, trying to make $2,000, $3,000 a month so that I don't have to go work in corporate America. I make my money through content production and from being an author. So you have all these people, and they're just basically regurgitating information, because there are billions of people that access YouTube. And so there is the possibility that even if somebody has 1 million views on their video, a popular YouTube creator has 1 million views on their video, there still may be somebody else who hasn't seen that video who's a part of another YouTuber's audience. And then there are people that go from video to video to video, trying to see if the next person has additional information that the previous person didn't have. And so one of the questions that we should be asking ourselves is, where is this information originating from? Like, so the person who got the million views that has the bigger platform, where are they getting that information from? Are they getting that information from the blogs? Are they getting that information from TMZ and then just coming back and, you know, creating their own video blog from that information? Are they finding out who these sources are and then reaching out to those sources to see if they'll come and talk to them? Or are they basically putting it out there, hey, you know, if you got a story to add to this topic, come and talk to me. And then there are people who want to be seen, who want to be heard, and so they're going from blogger to blogger to blogger, you know, trying to look for an outlet to tell their story. Now, I have had that happen to me once. I do, when I first started this platform, I was recapping TV shows. And then when YouTube demonetized my channel, and I was like, you know, I'm not going to put that much time and energy into this channel, you know, if YouTube is going to be treating me this way. But, you know, I might get back to doing the recaps. But so far, television just hasn't been interesting me lately. You know, I did a couple of the Yana Fix My Life video. I did a couple of recaps for Yana Fix My Life, but then like the last couple of episodes have just been, this content has been so overwhelming. Like, I just cannot deal with the whole molestation and rape and all of that stuff, like week after week after week. So I sit and I watch the show, but I just can't find the energy to come back and recap the shows. But Yana did a episode about a year ago where she interviewed these two women who were former prostitutes. And so I recapped that episode, and one of the women that was on that show reached out to me and said that if I wanted to interview her, she was open to doing the interview because she didn't feel that Iyanla had, you know, portrayed her side of the story the way she wanted it to be portrayed. So I told her no, because that's not, you know, I wasn't ready to move in that direction with my platform. And then after watching this whole R. Kelly situation, I don't think that is a route that I want to go, because I think that you kind of like, I don't know, you just have to be a different breed of person to be out here chasing down these people with these undocumented claims against another human being who's basically fighting, you know, for their freedom. You know, they want you to believe one narrative, and then if you don't believe that narrative, you know, people get angry and upset. And so in this book, Trust Me, I'm Lying, he pretty much goes into that. And so I'm just going to share, you know, what a couple of the chapters were about, and then read some of the things that Ryan Holiday says in this book. And so basically, he's saying that it's all a money grab. It's all about money. It's about, you know, bringing in an income, and that, you know, these news stations, they have so much to lose if they cannot produce content that people are watching, because their revenue is dependent upon advertiser dollars. So they've got to get out there, they've got to say whatever people want to hear, and they can push the envelope to the point of not doing so illegally. And that's why you hear people say, you know, according to sources or allegedly, you know, because that's supposed to be the umbrella to protect them from being sued from these people that they're out here doing these stories about without really having proof about what they're saying. So let me put on my glasses here, and then let's walk through this book. So, like I said, the book is called Trust Me, I'm Lying, Confessions of a Media Manipulator, and it's written by Ryan Holiday. Chapter 1 is about blogs. They make the news. And so in the opening paragraph, he talks about blogs matter. And he says, by blog, I'm referring collectively to all online publishing. There's everything from Twitter accounts to major newspaper websites to web videos to group blogs with hundreds of writers. I don't care whether the owners consider themselves blogs or not. The reality is that they are all subject to the same incentives, and they fight for attention with similar tactics. Most people don't understand how today's information cycle really works. Many have no idea of how much their general worldview is influenced by the way news is generated online. What begins online eventually ends up offline. So basically what he's saying here is you have all these mediums of getting information, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whether you're on YouTube. The people that are providing this content, they're doing so with an incentive, which is to make money. So as long as people are producing content on YouTube, then YouTube is benefiting because they are making a product that their advertisers can make money off of. And so they're not going to stop the lies, and they're not going to stop people from regurgitating the same information, because the more content that we put out here, the more the advertisers, the more audiences, the bigger the audience range is for advertisers to push their product and get their products in front of an audience. So part 2, how to turn nothing into something in 2 easy steps. And that's 2 as in it's way too easy to be putting this content out there and being successful at it. So he says, in the introduction, I explained a scam I call trading up the chain. And I didn't read that because a lot of this stuff is very technical in this book. And he talks about a lot of high-level stories that have happened in, with major corporations that, the average person, unless you're in business or in that industry, you probably don't remember the stories or know what he's talking about. Because I know that's what happened to me. It took me forever to get through this book because I'm an information junkie. And then I would go out and try and research about, okay, now what happened there? Who is he talking about? To get a better understanding. So trading up the chain is a strategy I developed that manipulates the media through recursion. I can turn nothing into something by placing a story with a small blog that has very low standards, which then becomes the source for a story on a larger blog, and that in turn for a story by larger media outlets. I create, to use the words of one media scholar, self-reinforcing news waves. People like me do this every day. So what he's saying he does here is he'll find a blog or a YouTuber who nobody knows anything about, and then he'll feed them a story. And then that person will then in turn blog about it or vlog about it if it's a video. And then if that story catches hold, then the next level of bloggers or vloggers can then consider that person on the low end as the source for the story that they're going to tell. And then they'll pick that up using this unknown, unheard of person as a source for like a major story, and then they'll put the story out there, and then if they get traction, then the actual media outlets will then pick it up and run with the story, and then it all traces back to this person. Like say it's somebody like myself that nobody really knows who this person is. I get on here and make a false statement or share this information that I've gotten from this reporter or this source, and then somebody else, a bigger blogger, picks it up and runs with it, and then that person gets the eye of somebody else and they run with the story. And now you keep hearing about sources says, according to the source, when the source really was nobody and the source just carried a lie. So then we jump over to chapter 3, and it says the blog con, how publishers make money online. And so he says traffic is money. On the face of it, blogs make their money from selling advertisements. These advertisements are paid for by the impression, generally a rate per 1,000 impressions. A site might have several ad units to each may have several ad units on each page. The publisher's revenue equals the cumulative cost per 1,000 multiplied by the number of page views. Advertisement times traffic equals revenue. So YouTube is the channel, right? Is the place to be. They go out and they search for advertisers. So then you look at my video, and then that ad is running on my channel. So for YouTube, a person has to watch that ad for 30 seconds in order for any money to be paid. And that money could be as low as 1 cent for a view of 30 seconds. And then it also based on the size of the platform. So of course, if you are a channel that has 4 million viewers or 4 million subscribers, then you're going to get more for that 30-second view than somebody on my level who only has 2,000 subscribers. So like I said earlier, the advertiser doesn't care whether the content on your channel is telling the truth or not. What they do care about is that you're not breaking the law, or you're not, talking about children and that type of thing. But other than that, pretty much anything goes. So he says publishers and advertisers can't differentiate between the types of impressions an ad does on a site. A pursuing reader is no better than an accidental reader. An article that provides worthwhile advice is no more valuable than one instantly forgotten. So long as the page loads and the ads are seen, both sides are fulfilling their purpose. A click is a click. So that's why you have so many people regurgitating information, and they don't care whether you watch the entire video. They don't care if you comment on the video. As long as that ad runs, that's revenue to people, and that's all that matters. So if they're just putting content out there that 1,000 other people have already put on their channel, they don't care whether you read it or not. Then he says scoops are traffic. One of the biggest shocks to the online world was the launch of TMZ. The blog was developed by AOL in 2005, and revenues skyrocketed to nearly $20 million a year almost immediately, paving the way for its now famous televised program. This was all accomplished through a handful of major scoops, or at least TMZ's special definition of scoops. The blog's founder, Harvey Levin, once said in an interview that TMZ is, quote, a serious news operation that has the same rigid standards that any news operation in America has, end quote. This is the same site that once published at 4:07 a.m. an exclusive scoop, a blurry, never-before-seen photo of future President John F. Kennedy on a boat filled with naked women. This exclusive scoop was headlined the JFK photo that could have changed history. The only thing is, it couldn't have altered world events for one simple reason. The man on the photo wasn't JFK. In fact, it turned out to be a spread from a 1967 issue of Playboy. Oops. Despite missteps like this, TMZ turned scoop getting into a science. They broke the story of Mel Gibson's anti-Semitic outburst during his DUI arrest, and then got video of Michael Richards' racist onstage meltdown, posted the bruised Rihanna police photo, and announced the news of Michael Jackson's death. TMZ originated 4 of the biggest stories to come from the internet and captured a substantial audience from the enormous surges of traffic. They didn't always use the most reputable, reliable means of getting their scoops, but nevertheless, today, when people think celebrity news, they think of TMZ. TMZ got their fame by posting fake news, fake stories, and people resonated with that, and now they become, this, like, we have local news sources, like what were once reputable news sources, citing TMZ, like according to TMZ this, according to TMZ. Like, how can you take a CBS, ABC, or NBC, CNN, or Fox News seriously when the lead-in begins with according to TMZ? So then he goes on to talk about using names to build a name. So blogs are built on scoops and traffic, and this is made possible by big names. The economics of the internet values consistent hitters. And so one of the safest bets a site can make is to lock up an all-star or an A-list blogger to helm their business. Like so much of the history of blogging, this trend began with Gawker, sort of. So the way they build their brand is to get these bloggers, people who are already doing like online blogging, who have been very successful, who follow celebrity news or what have you, and then they hire those people to come and work for them because the people already have a huge following, and now they can market and profit off of their following to make these TV shows more successful. When you think about, all these celebrity gossip shows or even radio shows like the Steve Harvey Show, Tom Joyner, you have the Ricky Smiley Show, you have Dish Nation, Access Hollywood, they always go out and bring in people who are already popular, who already have a following, who may have had a blog out there, and then they bring those people in because those people bring their audiences with them, and then their audience tunes in, and then that helps the channels grow. Then he talks about the blog con, name scoops, and traffic create and exit. I've written about how sites engage in an endless chase for revenue through page views, and that is what they do. However, blogs are not intended to be profitable and independent businesses. The tools they use to build traffic and revenue are part of a larger play. So blogs are built to be sold. Though they make substantial revenue from advertising, the real money is in selling the entire site to a large company for a multiple of the traffic and earnings, usually to reach a rich sucker. So we've seen that happen over and over and over again. Like, you're following somebody, you like their blog, you're into what they're doing, and then the next thing you know, they've sold the blog to somebody else, and then the whole platform of the blog changes. We see that with Facebook. I don't know if they still allow it, but it used to be that people would create these Facebook pages. They would grow a huge audience on the Facebook page, and then they would sell the page to a big company, and they're not selling the content. They're not selling the platform that they built. They're actually selling the number of people that have liked that page. So you're following this page that's doing this really cool stuff, and then it gets up to like 100,000, 200,000 people liking that page, then they can go and market that page to a media outlet, who may want to do something else with it. And so it's all a money game. And once again, people don't care about the content that they're putting out there. They're not putting a lot of work into it. They're just like, it's all a numbers game and a money game. So he says, Web Blogs Incorporated was sold to AOL for $25 million. That's $25 million. It says the Huffington Post was sold to AOL for 31.5. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Huffington Post was sold to AOL for $315 million in cash. With its owner, Arianna Huffington, deliberately eschewing the opportunity to wait and build for an IPO. TechCrunch was also sold to AOL for $30 million. Discovery bought the blog Tree Hugger for $10 million. ARS Technica was sold to Condé Nast for more than $20 million. Know Your Meme was acquired by Cheeseburger Media for 7 figures. Fox Sports Interactive purchased the sports blog network Yardbarker. And then he says that I worked on an acquisition like this myself when The Collective, a talent management company I advised, bought Bloody Disgusting, a blog about horror films, with an eye on potentially selling it to someone bigger down the line. So there is big money. So if you want to try and grow your channel to like 1 million people, you might have some company come in and decide they want those 1 million subscribers, and they may offer you millions of dollars to get them. Let's see, what else does he talk about here? Okay, so anything goes in the den of thieves. So he says, it doesn't surprise me at all that shady business deals and conflicts of interest abound in this world. My favorite example, of course, is myself. I am regularly the online ad buyer and the publicist or PR contact for the clients I represent. So the same sites that snarkily cover my companies also depend on me for large 6 or 7 figure checks each year. On the same day, a writer or a blog might be emailing me for information about a rumor they heard. Their publisher is calling me on the phone asking if I want to increase the size of my ad buy. So he's letting you know that it's not just about clicks and views. Like, this is a money-making machine that's going on. Everybody's in bed together, and you got to know how to play the game. You got to know, do your research. So if you are a vlogger out there and you're trying to grow to this machine, you got to know how to work it from the inside. You got to know all the ropes, all the ins and outs, and how, to get this thing done. And when you think about, these, like all these kids out there that have these channels and they're making millions and millions of dollars a year, there's a machine behind them. It isn't that they're these little cute kids with colorful hair and they're making ribbons or they're doing, demonstrating toys. It's not about that. Somebody has gone behind the scene and worked people behind the scene to make them into these huge channels with 10, 15, 20 million subscribers. They didn't do that just because that many people sat down and looked at their channel and thought they were amazing. And so then the last part of this chapter, it says, enter the manipulator. Bloggers eager to build names and publishers eager to sell their blogs are like two crooked businessmen colluding to create interest in a bogus investment opportunity, building up buzz and clearing towns before anyone gets wise. In this world where the rules and ethics are lax, a third player can exert massive influence. Enter the media manipulator. And so he says, the assumptions of blogging and their owners present obvious vulnerabilities that people like me exploit. They allow us to control what is in the media because the media is too busy chasing profits to bother trying to stop us. They are not motivated to care. Their loyalty is not to their audience, but to themselves and their con. While ultimately this is reason to despair, I have found one small solace. Conning the con man is one of life's most satisfying pleasures, and it's not even hard. In the next chapter, I will outline how to do this and how it is being done. I have broken down the manipulation of blogs into 9 effective tactics. Each exposes a pathetic vulnerability in our media system. Each, when wielded properly, levels the playing field and gives you free rein to control the flow of information on the web. So, like I've been saying all along, like we are being, even if you're the blogger or you're the consumer of the blog, we're all being consumed by this information that's being put out there, not to serve like a true purpose of informing people, but it's out there to serve the purpose of making people money. Okay, so then he goes on to talk about the tactics. So in chapter 4, we have tactic number 1, bloggers are poor, help pay their bills. So he says there are many ways to give someone a bribe. Very rarely does it mean handing them a stack of bills. The criteria that the blogger's employer uses to determine the size of their paycheck, the stuff bloggers are paid for, can be co-opted and turned into an indirect bribe. These levers were easy enough for me to find and properly identified and wielded. They turned out to be as effective as any overt payoff. And so he says it begins with how these bloggers are hired. Put aside any notion that applicants are chosen based on skill, integrity, or a love of their craft. Ben Parr, editor-at-large at the popular technology blog Mashable, was once asked what he looked for when he hired writers for his blog. His answer was one word: quickness. Online journalism is fast-paced. He explained, we need people that can get the story out in minutes and can compose the bigger opinion pieces in a couple of hours, not a couple of days. As to any actual experience in journalism, that would be considered only a definite plus. So people are hired by these companies and they're hired to get stories out fast. And that's why if you ever go on TMZ, like they'll have stories and they'll say at 12:01 a.m., somebody loaded this story. Then you'll have at 1:10 a.m. it'll be an update to the story. Then 3 o'clock in the morning, another update. And it's like, who is up in the middle of the night updating these stories? But what's happening is they put the story out first without fact checking or making sure it's accurate. And then somebody else comes in and does research. And then as they're researching the story, they, instead of taking the original story down or changing the original story, they still want you to read that original story because that's the juicy part. But then they'll go in and just make these continuous updates to the story, or they may, or other blogs may rewrite that same story, but then they'll put the different information or the newfound information. And so they're increasing their clicks and views. So like with TMZ, they know that people are going to continuously come back for updates, so that original story is just increasing in popularity. And then the more people read the story, now they're sharing the story on social media. So the person who saw the story at 12:01 when it was initially posted, so he shares the story, and then I log on to Facebook at 10 o'clock in the morning. So the original story is going to be there, but I'm going to have all these updates, these hourly, bi-hourly updates that have been posted as more information has come along. And then you have to ask yourself, how many people who read the original story actually comes back to see if there are updates? So now you have people out there with this false narrative, this false information that was put out there for the sole purpose of getting clicks and views. So then he goes on to chapter 5. He talks about tactic 2, tell them what they want to hear. And this is where YouTube comes into play, because if you notice, if you're a YouTube creator, you'll notice this. And even if you're somebody who comments on channels, how people will go from video to video looking for points of views that coincide with their point of view. So somebody that hates R. Kelly is going to go out and find all these negative videos, blogs, what have you, that, you know, degrades him and puts him down and says all these things are true about him because that's what they want to hear. And then somebody, you know, who's more open-minded, you know, they're going to do their research and they're going to look for more reputable sources, you know, that's going to kind of like validate them feeling the way that they feel. And so, you know, both sides win because they're pulling the audience that wants to hear what they have to say, even if what they have to say isn't valid, hasn't been researched, isn't founded in truth. So he says the problem of journalism, says Edward J. Epstein in his book, Between Fact and Fiction, is simple. Journalists are rarely in a position to establish the truth of an issue themselves, since they didn't witness it personally. They are entirely dependent on self-interested sources to supply their facts. Every part of the news making process is defined by the relationship. Everything is colored by its reality. Who are these self-interested sources? Well, anyone selling a product, a message, or an agenda, people like me. And that's him saying, not people like me. And so someone had asked the question, if I don't like dropping bloggers or YouTube creator names in my videos, but so on this R. Kelly story, you have some big name bloggers out there, you know, people that have like over 100,000 subscribers, 500,000 subscribers. And so they're coming out with this information, and then you're like, where did they get that information from? Like, is that true? Who are these people they're talking to? How can they be connected to all these people? And so people are now starting to wonder, like, are these people being paid to create this content? And I'm not saying that these people are being paid to create this content. What I'm saying is there are instances where people do get contacted and they are paid to put a certain narrative out. And so that's why you have to be very, very careful in what you're following. And so not only are they getting money from YouTube revenue, but they're also getting money from the people who are behind the scenes who want to push this certain narrative to get out. And so their views are going to be very biased. They're going to like swear on God, that what they're saying is accurate, what they're saying is true, and you need to believe them, and you need to keep coming back to them for the information that they're providing, because they have the inside scoop. And technically, they do have the inside scoop, because the person who's pushing the narrative and pushing the story and pushing the content that they're putting on their channel, that's their inside scoop. And that person, we don't know if they're being truthful and if the information that they have is accurate. All we know is that we got this person, they seem positive, they seem reassured, they seem to have the receipts to back up what they're saying, but in all actuality, what they're getting and what they're posting on their channel is being supplied to them by a source that may be paying them to put that narrative out there. See, here, he talks about the deliberate leak. It says, once during a lawsuit, I needed to get some information into the public discussion, so I dashed off a fake internal memo, printed it out, scanned it, and sent the file to a bunch of blogs as if I were an employee leaking a memo we just gotten from our boss. The same bloggers who were uninterested in the facts when I informed them directly gladly put up exclusive and leaked posts about it. They could tell my side of the story because I told it to them in words they wanted to hear. More people saw it than ever would have had I issued an official statement. So that's letting you know that people are feeding certain bloggers, certain vloggers information because they don't have the platform or the means of getting the message out themselves. So they'll do it through these popular bloggers. And then one thing this book doesn't even get into, and that is the paid troll. Like, there are people who are paid to go on social media sites and to make derogatory comments, to make nasty comments, to agree with whatever the content is about, and then they're paid to attack people who disagree with what the content is about. And then you also have trolls who, if a news source knows that their story isn't going to get a lot of traction, they'll pay trolls to actually go on and start conversations. And then as these conversations are taking place and there's more hits to the actual news article, then that raises it in the rankings, and then it gets more visibility. But those people that are actually commenting are not always true people who have read and have an opinion. These are people that are actually paid to get the conversation started so that the article can, elevate in the rankings and get more visibility. And then you read, and then someone comes on, they click on the article and they see, 300 people have already commented on this. And so then they add their content, and then that's where you start to get legitimate responses, but it's not really legitimate because it's being derived or directed by the narrative that was put in the blog, which was created to steer a certain opinion. And so you may get people, and that's why you find, like, if you read the comments, whether it's a YouTube video or whether it is a article, on Yahoo or on Google or something that comes up for some source, regardless of the source, you'll find that 90% of the comments are always in agreement of the article, and that's because the articles are written to guide a certain opinion. And then when people come in and say, I disagree with this, then they get attacked, and then then we get into the whole, like the whole social media thing, with like the Me Too movement, the Time's Up movement, the whatever movement, the Mute R. Kelly movement. Like, these people are not always real people. Sometimes these are people, well, they're real people, but they're people who have been paid to come on and voice a certain opinion. And then when you get enough of those opinions out there, then you drive the conversation, and then somebody comes in, 2 weeks later, and they see thousands of comments saying, R. Kelly is guilty, R. Kelly did this, R. Kelly did this. Then they believe, okay, he must be guilty. If you got 5,000 people saying that he's guilty. He has to be guilty. He has a whole hashtag that says mute R. Kelly. And then you have people that are commenting and adding their 2 cents who have never even researched or read an article or anything, but they're basing their opinion solely on the narrative that has been driven and what is being said in the comments by the majority of the people. Then he talks about press release. He says, when I first started in PR, all the leading web gurus were proclaiming the death of the press release. Good riddance, I thought. Journalists should care too much about what they write to churn out articles and posts based on press releases. I could not have been more wrong. Before long, I came to see the truth. Blogs love press releases. It does every part of their job for them. The material is already written, the angle laid out, the subject newsworthy. And since it comes from an official news writer, they can blame someone else if the story turns out to be wrong. As a 2010 study by Pew Research Center's Project for Excellence in Journalism found, as news is posted faster, often with little enterprise reporting added, the official version of events is becoming more important. We found official press releases often appear word for word in first accounts of events, though often not noted as such. Okay, so basically, companies are putting out press releases, celebrities are putting out press releases. Anybody in the media is putting out or consider themselves in the media or who want to be in the media are putting out these press releases. They're giving it to popular bloggers, giving it to vloggers, and then these people are reading it verbatim as though it's fact. They haven't researched it, checked it out, or anything. They're just reading it and creating content and not even saying that this is a press release that I got from such and such organization. They're presenting it as their own factual content, not even needing to be the source. So bloggers are under incredible pressure to produce, leaving little time for research or verification, let alone for speaking to sources. In some cases, the story they are chasing is so crazy, R. Kelly, that they don't want to risk doing research because the whole facade would collapse. So basically, if bloggers, like people covering the R. Kelly story, if they actually research some of the stuff that they're putting out there, if they just use their common sense to say, does this even sound feasible? They would have to stand down and pull back, show some integrity and say, I'm not going to put this nonsense out there because it's one, probably not true, and two, it's just ridiculous that anybody would even believe that this actually happened. But because we live in a reality world society, people are willing to risk that because people are just in need of information that really has nothing to do with them. And this need for information allows people to put this information out there that may not be true. And then in chapter 6, which is tactic number 3, give them what's spread, not what's good. The advice that MIT Media Studies professor Henry Jenkins gives publishers and companies is blunt. If it doesn't spread, it's dead. With social sharing comes traffic, and with traffic comes money. Something that isn't shared isn't worth anything. So for someone tasked with advancing narratives in the media, the flip side of this advice is equally straightforward. If it spreads, you're golden. Blogs don't have the resources to advertise their posts, and bloggers certainly don't have the time to work out a publicity launch for something they've written. Every blog, publisher, and oversharer in your Facebook feed is constantly looking to post things that will take on a life of their own and get attention, links, and new readers with the least possible work. Whether their content is accurate, important, or helpful doesn't even register on their list of priorities. If the quality of their content doesn't matter to bloggers, do you think it's going to matter to marketers? It's never mattered to me. So I design what I sell to bloggers based on what I know and they think will travel, will spread fast. I give them what they think will go viral online and make them money. So then he goes on to talk about how like organizations will put out two stories, and he talks about this story in Detroit. So one part of the story was showing these old burned out buildings about, how Detroit has really gone down. And then another part of the story was about homelessness, about the number of dogs that are running the streets in Detroit, because Detroit has really declined economically. And so they, in some cases, they'll put these separate stories out about it, and then they'll see which one takes traction. And then the one that takes traction is the one that will get the attention and get put out on social media, when in actuality, burnt out buildings in Detroit really isn't as important as the number of homeless people in Detroit, or the fact that there's 50,000 dogs running the street in Detroit. And if you go into these neighborhoods where the dogs are, you might get bitten and get the rabies. But because people don't want to deal with social issues like that, those articles get pushed back or don't get published at all. So then in chapter, I skipped over a lot because, like I said, it was a lot of technical and redundant stuff. So we get to chapter 23, and it says, "Welcome to Unreality." And so he has, like in these big letters here, it says, "All that happens, all that's known by the media, all that is newsworthy, all that is published as news, all that spreads." And the type gets smaller and smaller as he goes. And so he says, in other words, the media is a mechanism for systematically limiting the information seen by the public. It's not there to share information. So he has a section called "From the Fake, the Real." It's at these vulnerable points that manipulation becomes more powerful than reality. The process of simple create a pseudo event, trade it up the chain, elicit real responses in action, and you have altered reality itself. I may understand the consequences of it now, but that doesn't stop a part of me, even as I write this book, from seeing this thirst as an opportunity to insert messages into the discussions online. You can't count on people to restrain themselves from taking advantage of an absurd system. Not with millions of dollars at stake. Not when the last line of defense, the fourth estate, known as the media, is involved in the cash grab too. So he says, from here, we get the defining feature of our world today, a blurred line between what is real and what is fake, what actually happens and what is staged, and finally, between the important and the trivial. There is no doubt in my mind that blogs and blogging culture were responsible for this final break. When blogs can openly proclaim that getting it first is better than getting it right, when a deliberately edited fake video can reach and within hours require action by the President of the United States, when the perception of a major city can be shaped by the photographs spread best in an online slideshow, and when someone like me can generate actual outrage over advertisements that don't actually exist, the unreal becomes impossible to separate from the real. So, back to the R. Kelly, because that's what we're talking about in this series. Now you can see how people can just get out there and just make claims and just produce content that hasn't been vetted, that hasn't been researched. They're just repeating what somebody else has said, what somebody else has said, what somebody else has said, and then you get this perpetual cycle that just keeps going round and round. And so at this point, we don't know what's true and what's not true. We can only base it on our life experiences and what is rational in our own minds as to what we believe and what we don't believe and what our own agendas is, because you will find that a lot of the people, that follow the R. Kelly is guilty are people, who say that they have been sexually molested or sexually assaulted themselves. And so that's who a lot of these blogs and vloggers are appealing to, because they know that these people are going to believe the narrative, that these people are going to share their content. They're going to go on the Facebooks and the Twitters underneath their content, and they're going to argue with complete strangers. So in this how to read a blog section, he has a few little things here, and I'll read a few of them. It says, when you see a blog begin with, according to a tipster, know that the tipster was someone like me tricking the blogger into writing what I wanted. When you see, we're hearing reports, know that reports could mean anything from random mentions on Twitter to message board posts or worse. When you are leaked or official documents, know that the leak really meant someone just emailed the blogger, and that the documents are almost certainly not official and are usually fake or fabricated for the purpose of making desired information public. When you see breaking or we'll have more details as the story develops, know that what you're reading reached you too soon. There was no wait and see, no attempt at confirmation, no internal debate over whether the importance of the story necessitated abandoning caution. The protocol is going to press early, publishing before the basic facts are confirmed and not caring whether it causes problems for people. When you see updated on a story or article, no one bothered to rework the story in light of the new facts. They just copied and pasted some shit at the bottom of the article. Now, that's what I was talking about with TMZ. If you go on the TMZ articles, you're going to see update, and it's going to have like different time, the time that they updated the story. When you see sources tell us, know that these sources are not vetted, they are rarely corroborated, and they are desperate for attention. When you see a story tagged with exclusive, know that it means the blog and the source worked out an arrangement that included favorable coverage. Know that in many cases the source gave this exclusive to multiple sites at the same time, or that the site is just taking ownership of a story they stole from a lesser known site. When you see said in a press release, know that it probably wasn't even actually a release the company paid to officially put out over the wire. They just spammed a bunch of blogs and journalists via email. When you see according to a report by, know that the writer summarizing the report from another outlet has but the barest abilities in reading comprehension, little time to spend doing it, and every incentive to simply exaggerate. When you see we've reached out to so-and-so for comment, know that they sent an email 2 minutes before hitting publish at 4:00 a.m. long after they'd written the story and closed their mind, making absolutely no effort to get the truth before passing it off to you as the news. And when you see an attributed quote or a said so-and-so, know that the blogger didn't actually talk to the person, but probably just stole the quote from somewhere else. And per the rules of the link economy, they can claim it as their own as long as there is a tiny link to the original buried in the post somewhere. Okay. Oh, I like this one. When you hear friends say in a conversation, I was reading that, know that today the sad fact is that they probably just glanced at something on a blog. Was that it? Yeah. So guys, that was it. This is, like I said, it's a technical book. It has a lot of information that most people probably wouldn't read on a regular basis. But for someone who's looking into getting into blogging, I definitely recommend this book. We're all being duped. We're all passing on fallacies and false stories. And so and I really wanted to do this video just to let people know that just because you see somebody that has a story to tell, it doesn't mean that the story, let me take these glasses on. So I really wanted to just do this blog just to re-emphasize that just because you read a blog, just because you read an article, a lot of these blogs have titles that make it seem like they are like official media outlets, when in actuality they are just bloggers that have catchy names and they have their layout, set up like they are a real news outlet, when actuality is they're just bloggers like the rest of us. Some people are more sophisticated than others. Like I just come on here and get in front of this camera and start talking. And then you have other people that have all these gadgets. They have these nice intros. They have the pop-up screens that they're doing with Google Slides and Photoshop and Adobe and all this stuff. And to make it look like they are real news sources. But at the end of the day, they haven't really talked to anybody. They haven't really interviewed anybody. They're just passing on information that they've read somewhere else and that they gotten from some source that may be paying them, or they received a phone call from somebody who just wants to be on camera or who just wants to talk because they have a book that they're selling, or nobody's listening to them, so they want a platform. And so as consumers, we need to be very careful about what we're consuming and how much precedence we put into what we're consuming. And then as myself, as somebody that's actually doing a blog or a video blog, I too have a responsibility to the people that, who are coming by my channel, who are watching my channel, to say, hey, like somebody cussed me out on my video where I was talking about Dominique Gardner finally speaks, when I clearly said at the beginning of the video, hey, Dominique did an interview. I gave the guy's name. I said he was from the New Yorker, which is his blog. I gave you his name. I gave you his resume. And I said, I'm going to read this interview that he did with Dominique Gardner, but that didn't stop people, from cussing me out, telling me I didn't know what I was talking about, telling me I was reading somebody else's content, when I clearly said that that was what I was going to do. So, anyway, I said I was going to put this information out there for you guys. I finally did it. I feel like a burden has been lifted off my shoulders. And I'm going to come back and do a second video where I am talking about Azriel Clary's father, Angelo Clary, and the shenanigans he has going on over on Instagram. So, guys, that's it for me. Let me know what you thought about this video. Leave your comments below. Rate the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.